Journeys Ahead 2 Lineage Chapter 12 Ethereal. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Crossing through the portal, Void landed into the next sector of the world, one that he instantly recognized. These were the lands of the Ruby Sand, Solgypt, home of the Grand Pyramids. The moon, a malevolent eye in the blood-red night sky, beat down on Solgypt. The air, thick and shimmering with residual heat, vibrated with an almost tangible energy, the kind that made one's teeth ache and skin prickle. Beneath the scorching residual gaze, the sand stretched endlessly, not the beige or golden hues of a familiar desert, but a deep, shimmering crimson red. Every grain seemed to possess an inner light, a subtle glow that pulsed with the desert's strange, almost sentient life force. Dunes rose like petrified waves, their crests sharp and unforgiving, casting long, jagged shadows that offered little respite. Crystals, the size of a man's fist and ranging in colors from deep garnet to pale rose, littered the landscape. They weren't just rocks. They hummed with power akin to the ones back in the Isle of Dreams. Their surfaces were etched with patterns that seemed to shift and writhe. Then, Void noticed it. Before him stood three of Earth's most magnificent structures, the Grand Pyramids of Gonza. Each pyramid, though clearly sharing a common architectural lineage, possessed its own distinct character. The largest, anchoring the formation with its imposing bulk, was worn down by time and conflict. Deep gouges, like the scars of ancient battles, ran down its sides, hinting at a history filled with both grandeur and strife. The smallest pyramid nestled protectively beside its larger sibling. It seemed almost untouched by time. Its peak remained sharp and defined. Unlike the others, it bore no visible carvings, its smooth, pristine facade emanating an almost unsettling tranquility. The final pyramid, positioned slightly apart from the other two, appeared to be in a state of constant decay. Crumbling stone littered its base, and the wind howled through gaping holes in its structure. It was a skeleton of its former self, a reminder that despite its dilapidated state, it still possessed a certain haunting beauty, a whisper of majesty clinging onto the ruins. "Oh man, this is..." Void began, when all of a sudden, a giant bright light flew over his head, throwing up sand and wind that even caused him to stumble. In shock, Void looked up, watching in amazement as what appeared to be a giant, white glowing butterfly, one with the shape of a monarch, drifted upwards, then settled itself down upon the tallest pyramid, casting an ethereal light over the desert. It had no discernible details from afar. It was just a pure white glowing shape of a being with two visible conductors in the place of its eyes. A gray-white one and a yellow one, both light matter. Void could sense it. "Ha! Aren't they beautiful?" The voice of Cogson yelled, as Evelyn landed beside Void, carrying the old-timer in her tail.
"They're bright as hell is what they are,"
the Spark had said, as she dropped the visibly smiling old-timer. What exactly am I looking at here? Some kind of light matter butterfly?" Void asked, as the three stared up in awe at the gargantuan creature. "What you are looking at, dear boy, is a beautiful symbiosis between matter. These two sources of power have conjoined to create one powerful entity, a soul fusion of some type. And it's magnificent," Cogson explained, as he slowly rolled forwards with a giddy nature in his heart.
"He's just excited because it's a big insect. One that has us both enthralled, but extremely worried,"
Evelyn said with a cross in her arms, as the being's light reflected off her visor. "Which is why you're here, Void. Given that this being is in a state of light, it shouldn't be that hostile. But if things go awry, that's when you and Evelyn step in. My old arms can't fight these days. Oh, sorry. Cogson said as he began to roll forwards with his matter extractor extended. We take it nice and slow, send the pyramid, calm him down, and extract. Should be pretty easy lemon squeezy. He added as both Void and Evelyn silently began to follow. The wind howled a mournful tune as Void and Evelyn traversed forth behind Cogson, entering what had been the skeletal remains of a forgotten civilization from ancient Egyptians. Sand, the color of rust and dried blood, swirled around their ankles, clinging to their worn boots. In the distance, the jagged silhouette of the colossal pyramid stretched against the harsh, bleached sky. The conductor, a beacon in the desolate landscape. It had been a lifetime, a distorted eternity since they last walked side by side. The last time Void could recall was when Evelyn walked him to school as a boy. Now reunited against all odds, it felt to be a fragile semblance of normalcy flickering between them. Void, lean and hardened by years of survival, glanced at Evelyn, the moon above casting a long, distorted shadow, making the landscape appear even more alien. Now, an unsettling question had been gnawing at him. He finally broke the silence, his voice rough from the coarse wind. Evelyn, what happened to your face? Evelyn stopped, her figure outlined against the crimson sky. Her hand instinctively went to the face guard that covered her head. It wasn't just protection from the elements, it was a necessary barrier. Her voice, when she spoke, was slightly muffled by the device, automated.
One of the monsters,
she said, the words clipped and devoid of self-pity.
They burned me badly. My face wouldn't heal properly, not like it should have. This thing helps me see, helps me breathe. Fine, if that's what you're worried about.
Void's expression softened. He knew Evelyn. Fine was her default setting when things were decidedly not so fine. He wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but hesitated. The years apart had built walls, invisible but palpable. Evelyn then turned to fully face him, the lenses of her face guard reflecting the stars like embers. The expression he could see in her eyes, however, was warm and filled with affection.
Hey, don't sweat it. I'm quite used to this stupid thing,
she said, her voice shifting to a lighter tone. She reached out and gently squeezed the smaller spark's shoulder, a small gesture that spoke volumes.
Look at you, Void. You've grown into such a fine young man. You, like the rest of us, are alive and well. I'm so proud of who you've become.
The words struck a chord within him, a melody of familial love, long unheard. He ducked his head, a faint blue flush rising on his cheeks. He was no longer the frightened boy Evelyn remembered. He was a survivor, a warrior, but her simple praise unlocked a vulnerability he usually kept tightly locked away for the most part. Oh, stop it, Void mumbled, trying to sound annoyed, pushing aside the surge of emotion. He then bumped her playfully with his shoulder, and Evelyn retaliated with a shove of her own, nearly knocking him off balance. Void stumbled momentarily, righting himself with a laugh that echoed in the desolate landscape.
Still as clumsy as ever,
Evelyn chuckled, her eyes sparkling. Void shoved her again, harder this time, the playful aggression a comfortable echo of their shared past. It was a familiar dance, a language unspoken between them, a reassurance that despite the horrors they had witnessed, the bond that tied them together remained. Hey, if it makes you feel any sense of comfort, Alice told me he loves you very much. You're still as pretty as ever, even with the scars. So, if it's bothering you, don't let it. Void assured, making Evelyn smile under the visor.
Well, aren't you just a little charmer?
She said, leaving Void the nod, and then approached Cogson, who was now awkwardly hopping up the large side of the pyramid, looking like a pogo stick. The moon beat down on Void's face as he now trudged alongside Mr. Cogson. The gritty sand of the pyramid slope shifted beneath their feet. Like everyone else, it had been a long time since the two had last seen each other, a lifetime measured in loss of their world, Savaheim. Side by side with Evelyn close by, they climbed towards the creature of impossible beauty. Cogson, despite his age and his obvious struggle with the incline, kept pace surprisingly well, the rhythmic tap of his makeshift pogo leg being a counterpoint to the whispering wind. Void couldn't help but notice the peculiar way the leg moved, the lack of a natural gait, the fact that the wheel had shifted downwards to make a stand. Finally, he couldn't hold back his curiosity any longer. "Mr. Cogson," Void began, his voice still a little rough from the wind. "If you don't mind me asking, what happened to your legs?" The old man paused for a moment, his breath coming in short puffs. He didn't seem bothered by the question. His weathered face actually softened with a touch of sadness. "Ah, yes, my legs. A souvenir, you might say, from the fall. One of those beasts ripped them clean off when Savaheim crumbled." He shrugged, a surprisingly lighthearted gesture considering the gravity of his words. A wave of guilt then shot through Void. He shouldn't have asked. Before he could formulate an apology, however, Cogson continued, his eyes twinkling. "Look at me now. I'm still kicking, still breathing, still climbing giant world monoliths. Don't waste your pity, Void. The past is the past. We must look forward." He chuckled, a dry, crackling sound. "Besides, my immobility has given me time to focus on my studies. On that note, I was just thinking about the next generation of sparks." Void tilted his head, curious by what he was about to mention. "What about him?" he asked. "Oh, just the future, my boy. They will come from these experiments, I'm sure of it. And when they do, I'll be ready to instill them in the same love for knowledge, the same spark of curiosity that I attempted to instill within you all, even if you were all kind of lazy." He nudged Void playfully with his shoulder. To this, Void managed a small smile. He'd always been a challenging student, too preoccupied with his knighthood desires to focus on the finer points of theoretical physics, as one would say. "Anywho, I'm just glad you're alive, dear boy," Cogson said, his voice suddenly serious, the twinkle back in his eyes. "Truly, when those newcomers arrive, when I build my school, the Cogson Academy for Aspiring Sparks, I hope you'll consider enrolling your child." To this, Void stopped and nodded to the teacher, before setting his sights upon the butterfly that loomed down at them with curious eyes. The air thrummed with an energy Void had never felt before. Even his new electric powers felt muted, insignificant in the face of the being before them. Now, as close as can be, the trio were taken aback by how impossibly large it was. Its wingspan the width of the pyramid's apex, the faint color of yellow rippling across their surface like living oil slicks, morphing in mesmerizing patterns. Light pulsed from its very being, bathing the landscape in a soft, otherworldly glow. Evelyn, usually so calm and collected, fidgeted beside the boys. Her fingers tightened as the matter extractor emerged from her tail's bladed tip. Void could feel the nervous energy radiating from her. Cogson, on the other hand, stood slightly ahead, his posture relaxed, and a gentle smile gracing his lips. "Easy now, big fellas," Cogson murmured, his voice soft and soothing, carrying on the still air. "It's time to come back home." The conductor's antennae twitched, its massive eyes fixing on Cogson. A low, resonant hum emanated from it, a sound that vibrated deep within Void's metal bones. It felt like a question, an assessment. "It's okay. It's okay." Cogston continued, his voice unwavering. The hum intensified, then abruptly shifted, morphing into something sharper, more defensive. The conductor's wings flared, sending a wave of shimmering energy rippling outwards. Void instinctively raised his hand, ready to shield them, but Cogston held up his own hand, stopping him. "Shh," he soothed, taking a slow, deliberate roll forwards. "We understand your hesitation. You're scared, aren't you? Don't worry, we're not going to hurt you." He closed the distance, stopping just a few feet from the base of the pyramid's top. He looked at the conductors, his eyes filled with a genuine empathy that resonated within Void. "You two recognize me, right? I'm not the bad one. I'm not the scary one with needles and junk. I'm the friend. It's time to come back. Time to join your siblings." The conductor seemed to consider his words. Its wings slowly lowered, the defensive posture softening. The hum subsided, replaced by a low, melancholic sigh that seemed to carry the weight of ages. "Kevin, you're a good pair, you both. You're gonna be alright," Cogston said gently. "We can give you a nice little rest, and then you can return to play with your siblings." Void watched, mesmerized as Cogston's words seemed to weave a spell around the creature. He had always known the old-timer possessed a unique connection with the natural world, a gift for understanding and calming even the most volatile of entities. But here, in the presence of such raw primal power, his abilities were amplified, breathtaking, his spark-born gift. Finally, the conductor tilted its massive head, its multi-factored eyes seeming to search Cogston's very soul. After a long, silent moment, it gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Taking that as their cue, Void and Evelyn cautiously approached, each holding their matter extractors. Void focused, his heart pounding in his chest. He then carefully aimed the extractor at one of the conductor's eyes. The device hummed to life, a faint beam of light extending outwards towards the shimmering surface. The conductor pair didn't flinch. It remained perfectly still, a resigned serenity settling over it. The beam then touched its wing, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, shimmering particles of light began to flow into the extractor, drawn in like motes of dust in a sunbeam. Evelyn followed suit, aiming her extractor at the opposite eye. The process was slow, deliberate, a gentle extraction rather than a forceful seizure like all the others. As the essence was drawn away, the colors of the conductor's wings seemed to soften, the vibrant hues fading into a gentler palette. Void oddly felt a pang of sadness, a sense of taking something vital from this magnificent creature, but he held on to the knowledge that they were doing this for the greater good of everyone. As the last of the light flowed into their extractors, the conductors let out a soft, contented sigh. Its wings faded, the magnificent colors, now muted pastels, drifting into the wind. It seemed smaller, less imposing, yet somehow even more beautiful. Void and Evelyn stood there, breathless, the matter extractors glowing softly in their hands. They had done it. They had captured the conductors, meaning there was one left. Cogston approached them, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and awe. He reached out, gently touching the conductors that were trapped. "Rest now, little ones," he whispered. "Rest and heal. We will care for you." Man, that was oddly beautiful, Void said as he eyed the conductors down. "Why were they so calm?" he added as Evelyn opened a portal back to the reformatter. "Not every wolf in the pack is as savage as the other, dear boy," Cogston said with a pat to Void's back, leaving him to nod and turn. Fair enough, he said, feeling all but ready to return home after a long, long day.